PHP has not only one command for server-side includes, but 4. Let's take a look at how they differ and what happens when an include file can't be found. The 4 commands are include, require, include_once, and require_once. They all do basically the same thing. They include the content of an external file in another page or in a PHP script. As a web designer, the only time you're likely to need include once or require once is if you're working with a programmer. Redefining a function or class generates a fatal error in PHP, so the once versions are intended to prevent that from happening in a complex programming environment. So that basically reduces your choice to just the first 2, include and require. The difference between them boils down to what happens when the include file can't be found. What include means is, look, I'd really like to include this file, but if you can't find it, just keep going. Require, on the other hand, is used in the sense of, look, I'm really going to be stuck if you can't find this file, so you may as well give up right now if you can't find it. In other words, require has a sense of being mandatory. If the file can't be found, the script goes no further. But if you're using include, the rest of the script is executed, even if the include file can't be found. Let's see what happens in practice. I'm going to switch to my browser. In my browser, I've loaded this page, which contains a server-side include. The list comes from a server-side include, and it says the final paragraph is in the original HTML, and it should be displayed even if the external file can't be found. This page uses the include command. The other page includes the same unordered list, but it uses the require command, and the final paragraph says it'll be displayed only if the external file can be found. Well, obviously the external file can be found in both cases because it's displaying correctly. So let's introduce a deliberate error into the scripts. Go into my editor, and on line 12 there is the include command. In this page, include.php, I'm using the include command, and it's including the includes/list.php file. So let's change that to lists and save that, and then go to the require.php page. It's exactly the same server-side include that's being included, but this time it's using require. Let's just change that to lists.php as well. Save that and then go back to the browser, and if I go to the include page and reload it, we get these rather ugly warnings here which say it's failed to open stream, which means basically it can't find the file. You can learn in more detail about what these error messages mean in the chapter on handling error messages, which is later on in the course. The important thing to notice here is I'm using include, and the final paragraph is in the original HTML and it is still being displayed. But if we go to require and reload that, we get similar warning messages, but that final paragraph is not displayed. In other words, once it's got to require, it can't find the file, it then just gives up completely. Now, there are a couple of other things that I'd like to point out about using server-side includes, so let's go back to my editor. This command on line 12, sometimes you'll see that require and include, the path is inside parentheses like this. And if I change that back to the correct name and then just save it, go back to my browser and reload it, you'll see that it works exactly the same way as before. So the parentheses, they're entirely optional. And when something is optional, I recommend that you leave it out. So you can just leave that out. The other important thing to notice here is I've used a path relative to the current document to indicate the location of the include file. This is very important. It's all to do with where PHP looks for external files. PHP looks for external files in several places following a strict order of precedence. The rules can be difficult to remember, but you won't go wrong if you follow these basic principles. Use a path that's relative to the current document. Document relative paths always begin with just a file or folder name, or if you need to go up a level, they begin with // If both files are in the same folder, Don't use just the file name. Begin the path with /. This ensures that PHP looks only in the current folder. Don't use a path relative to the site root. Paths relative to the site root always begin with a /. Browsers understand them, but PHP doesn't. So let's keep things simple. If you're not sure which command to use, go for include. If you use require and the external file can't be found, PHP abandons the rest of the script. And always specify the location of the external file using a path relative to the current document.